Hey there, friends. I've been thinking a lot lately about loneliness. Not just romantic loneliness, not the dramatic movie version where someone cries alone eating a tub of ice cream on the couch in a snuggie. Although, ironically, I just so happen to be wearing a snuggie, but no ice cream. Mostly because I didn't buy any, and future me is apparently both emotionally fragile and financially responsible. Getting back on topic. I mean the quieter kind of loneliness. The kind where you technically have people in your life, but still somehow feel emotionally separate from them. The kind where you socialize, make plans, go places, talk to people, laugh, host, flirt, show up, participate, and still sometimes in the night feeling like you exist slightly outside the circle. This has been sitting heavier with me recently because it happens to be a 3-day holiday weekend, and my plans got canceled. Which, logically, is not a huge deal. People get sick, people get tired, life happens, adult schedules are chaotic and flaky sometimes. None of that is malicious. But I realized the disappointment hit something much older in me, because the truth is, I've kind of always felt this way, even when I was in a serious relationship. And that realization forced me to confront something uncomfortable. Loneliness is not always about physically being alone. Sometimes it's about never fully feeling included. My ex wasn't cruel. Honestly, a lot of it probably came down to him being neurodivergent and not naturally social. He was also an only child, which I think shaped the way he moved through relationships and social dynamics too. Socializing just wasn't his strong suit. But the dynamic still affected me deeply because it constantly felt like I had to claw my way into his world like some emotionally determined raccoon trying to break into a locked trash can of belonging. I automatically treated him like my built-in plus one. I introduced him to people, I brought him into conversations, I made space for him naturally in my life. But when the roles were reversed, I often felt invisible. If we were around his family or friends, I was usually the one introducing myself, the one awkwardly inserting myself into conversations, the one trying to earn belonging instead of simply being welcomed into it. And over time, that does something to you emotionally, especially when you already grew up feeling socially outside the circle. I already grew up the invisible child. And honestly, a lot of that invisibility was by choice. If I did everything as perfectly as possible, my parents' attention stayed focused on my siblings instead of me. If I didn't fuck up too much, upset anyone, talk back, or create problems, I could mostly fly under the radar. So I learned very early on that being low maintenance was safer. Being quiet was safer. Being agreeable was safer. Not needing too much was safer. I became extremely good at self-containment. My parents were also very controlling, which is why I could really only see friends during school hours. After school was chores, responsibilities, structure, and home. Summers were mostly cousins, neighbors, or whoever my parents approved of. They were extremely particular about who I spent time with, so socializing always felt conditional, controlled, limited. And as an adult, I realize now they probably thought they were protecting me from the outside world. But they weren't protecting me from themselves. Everything changed when I turned 16 because in my family, working wasn't optional. The second you hit working age, you got a job. Ironically, employment became freedom. Work exposed me to people outside my tiny social bubble. Different ages, different personalities, different experiences. I got to exist in a world larger than school hallways and parental supervision. And even then, I was still the weird one. But somewhere along the lines, weird stopped feeling insulting. Now, I actually love my weirdness. I love that I'm loud sometimes, flirtatious, energetic, a little chaotic in groups, especially in adult-oriented spaces where people are open, expressive, playful, and sexually liberated. Around other ethical sluts, I feel weirdly free, unmasked, like I can finally exhale socially instead of constantly monitoring myself. I might be too much for some people, but honestly, they can go find less. I spent too much of my life trying to shrink myself into digestible pieces for other people's comfort. And the truth is, I'm not living in survival mode anymore. I don't want to disappear anymore. Now I just want to enjoy my life. I love hosting. I love making people feel comfortable. I love creating space where people feel welcomed, included, desired, safe, entertained, and seen. Honestly, if emotional support hostessing were an Olympic sport, I'd at least medal bronze. But lately, I've realized something important. I deserve to include myself in that care too. And maybe that's why canceled plans hit me harder than they seem to hit other people. Because when plans disappear, especially during a weekend where everyone else seems busy and connected, I end up laying in bed watching YouTube while my phone fills with messages from people I reached out to first, wishing them a lovely weekend while they tell me about their barbecues, vacations, lake days, parties, and group plans. And suddenly, I feel separate again. Not because I need constant attention. I really don't. But because it would be nice for people to follow through sometimes. It would be nice to feel intentionally included. It would be nice if people occasionally reached for me first instead of me always extending the emotional invitation outward. And I know friends are going to read this or hear this, and I want to make something very clear. This is not me pointing fingers at anyone in particular, and I'm absolutely not asking anyone to feel guilty. This is just how I feel. This is me trying to explain an internal experience that I know a lot of people quietly carry but don't always know how to articulate. And social media absolutely makes it worse because the internet has become one giant curated scrapbook of togetherness. Nobody posts, sat at home feeling weirdly forgotten tonight, cried after canceled plans because it tapped into old rejection wounds, scrolled my contacts trying to figure out who actually wants me around. Nope, just curated joy, group photos, and somebody's husband aggressively smoking meat for 14 hours while everyone comments goals. And listen, I know some people will say, just enjoy your own company. Sure, absolutely. Self-love matters. Being comfortable alone matters. But here's the thing. I do enjoy my own company. I actually love my own company. I work from home. I spend a massive amount of time alone already. I intentionally leave the house to break up the day because otherwise the walls start feeling a little too familiar and I start narrating my life to my cats like a deeply unstable nature documentary. I go for walks. I take drives. If there's a social munch or community event during the week, I genuinely love going. I like interacting with people. I like energy. I like connection. I like feeling part of something occasionally. I'm not bored. That's just people misunderstanding. I'm not sitting around incapable of entertaining myself. I'm not waiting for someone else to give my life meaning. I already know how to exist independently. I'm just trying to be a social butterfly once in a while. And that gets complicated in your 40s because socially, so much adult interaction revolves around drinking culture, couples, or family-centered activities. I'm not really a drinker, so you're usually not going to find me sitting alone at a bar unless it's an event I was specifically invited to. And honestly, what exactly is a 40-something-year-old woman supposed to be doing alone that I'm not already doing? I already go to the lake and have picnics by myself, read books, watch movies, go to lunch or dinner solo, people watch, take exploratory drives, do nature photography, garden. I do all of those things already. And while those things can absolutely be peaceful and fulfilling, there's still a difference between solitude and shared experience. Sometimes I don't want another solo self-care day. Sometimes I want someone to text, come hang out with us. Want to go do something? I thought of you. Because independence is wonderful, but humans are still social creatures. Wanting companionship does not mean you failed at loving yourself enough. It just means you want connection in addition to solitude, but not instead of it. Loneliness is not weakness. It's unmet connection. And maybe the reason this resonates with so many people is because There are a lot of adults quietly walking around feeling emotionally peripheral to everyone else's lives. I just happen to be willing to say it out loud.